start with transaction scoring. So again, this is the notion of being able to score 100% of your T&E or vendor payments, and score them against your policies or peer behavior. And what this allows you to do is to surface that 0.1% that really warrants human review. And so it's, the equation is pretty simple. It's really difficult for a human to review 100%, or you need a lot of people to review 100%. But if you're able to score them and prioritize them by risk, that is absolutely where you can focus your team on focusing on what's most risky to the business and prioritizing their time appropriately. And then letting the system do the rest, letting AI handle some of the heavy lifting. Um, Second is anomaly detection. So identifying outliers in approval flows, looking for vendor master changes, and expense submission patterns before the outliers cluster into a pattern. The earlier the signal, the less costly the response. Um, Again, we talked a lot about case linkage. This is the area that I, again, hear most about. So being able to match entities like vendors, employees, payment patterns, dates across regions and business units and cases. Um, this kind of coordination would be really difficult for a single investigator to identify manually. But this is, again, where AI is really well positioned to do some of that heavy lifting and then surface those to a human to then investigate. Smart scoping. So, touched on this a little bit before, but when an investigator opens a new case, instead of having to start from zero, the system is auto assembling prior related cases, vendor history, organizational reporting lines, and similar incidents from the past 12 or 24 months. And that enables the investigator to start from analysis versus assembly. And in my research and the conversations that I've been having, like this is where there's immediate impact of hours are saved per case because that investigator is not having to assemble and summarize and read through huge documents to get up to speed on the context of a case. And that kind of takes you into document summarization. I think this is a use case that probably all of us are very familiar with. I probably use it on a daily basis, but looking at very large documents, so 500-page transcripts or multi-threaded email chains, and turning them into reviewable timelines with citations. And this is where, when you talk about AI or generative AI and what you're hearing, you're mainly talking about large language models. And that is what it's really well positioned for, is to understand lots of language and be able to summarize and turn into something that's digestible. So with that, a summary of an investigator can actually verify. So not having to assemble and having to read everything and create that summary, but verify a summary that was generated in 30 minutes instead of taking days to be able to assemble that information, make sense of it, and then move forward. And then last but not least is speak up clustering. So being able to group hotline reports by theme, like retaliation, conflict of interest, harassment, fraud, or safety. And the what you're able to do with that is then you're identifying smoke. So you're saying there's a little smoke over here, but you're able to address it before it turns into a fire. And if you see like three retaliation reports from one business unit in 60 days, you don't need a fourth one to act. There's something going on, so you can kind of go over there and proactively address it. And again, I'd like to kind of call out the ACFE 2026 report to the nations, where it explicitly names proactive data monitoring as one of the controls most strongly associated with lower losses and faster detection. And what's important to take away from this slide is that statement at the bottom. So AI can find the what, but humans determine the why. And I often describe it as AI can help do a lot of that heavy lifting, and then keeping humans in the loop to determine those next steps and how to handle a situation. Um, so from where I see AI moving the needle, those are kind of like the 6 areas that I've seen, just concrete examples of people leveraging it to really get the job done. Um, but I think there's a really strong angle here that we need to talk about, which is about leveraging AI in a responsible way.